If you teach multiple preps and teacher planning seems to take every available minute you give it, I want you to try one reframe. Planning is deciding. It's not creating every activity. It's not making every slide. It's not finding the perfect resource. And it's definitely not rebuilding an entire unit from scratch every time you sit down. Planning is deciding what belongs, what happens next, what you already have, and what actually needs to be created. And separating those jobs can make planning feel a whole lot lighter.
Welcome to the Secondary Teacher Podcast, the podcast for middle and high school teachers juggling multiple preps to get the strategies to reduce overwhelm so that you don't have to choose between being an effective teacher and prioritizing important relationships. I'm your host, Khristen Massic, a 10-year high school engineering teacher, former middle school assistant principal, and teacher coach. Every week, we will discuss strategies, systems, and time-saving tips to help you not only survive but thrive as a multiple prep teacher.
We just wrapped up a series on back-to-school culture and classroom systems, and now we're going somewhere different because once your classroom is set up, once routines are in place and students know what to expect, the next question is, how do you actually plan the units they're going to move through? Especially when you have multiple preps, especially when you don't have a provided curriculum, especially when every unit feels like it has to be built from scratch. That's what this series is about. And it starts here with the most important reframe I can give you about what planning actually is. I want to be honest about something before we go any further. For the most of my teaching career, my planning periods weren't really planning periods. Email, grading, whatever felt most urgent that moment, that's where the time went. So the actual planning happened late at night, and that's when the spiral would kick in. Too many tabs open, too many options, too much to do, and not enough structure to know where to start. I'd sit down knowing exactly which unit needed attention, and an hour later, I'd have almost nothing to show for it. Then comes that low-grade feeling. Why can't I get this together? Why does this take me so long? How am I already behind? And the conclusion most of us land on is, I just don't have enough time. But I want to offer you something different because I don't think time is always the problem. Think about what happens when you sit down and say, okay, I'm going to plan this unit. You start thinking about what students need to learn. Then you realize you need an activity for one part. So you go looking for one. You find 3 possibilities and start comparing them. One is almost right, but you'd have to change it. Another looks good, but now you need to create a handout. Then you remember the activity you used last year wasn't terrible, so maybe you should find that before you create something new. Now you're searching through Google Drive. You find it, along with 6 other resources you forgot you had. And suddenly the question isn't, what does this unit need? It's, which of these 14 things should I use? And before long, you're searching, building, formatting, comparing, adapting, creating, and somewhere along the way, planning disappeared. That's not a time problem. That's a decision problem. Here's the reframe I want you to carry out of this episode. Planning is deciding, not creating, not building, not finding, not perfecting, deciding. What does this unit need to accomplish? Where are students starting? Where do they need to end up? What do they need to understand? Where do they need to practice? What do they eventually need to produce? What do I already have that supports these goals? What can I reuse? What needs to be adapted? What genuinely needs to be created, and what can wait? Those are planning decisions. And when you separate those decisions from all the creation work, this giant thing called plan my unit breaks into much smaller pieces. I wouldn't call it easy, but it's specific. And specific is so much easier to act on than I need to build unit 1. This is especially important if you've been teaching for a while, because chances are you don't actually have nothing. You might feel like you're starting from scratch because nothing is organized into the exact unit you need yet. But somewhere you probably have a slideshow, an activity that worked really well, a project students loved, a discussion prompt, something a colleague shared, a resource you downloaded and forgot about, a folder called something like Unit 2 stuff that you haven't opened since last May. That's not a unit, but it's not nothing either. It's raw material. And that distinction matters enormously for secondary teachers, especially multiple prep teachers who are building courses without a provided curriculum. A pile of resources is not a curriculum, but you don't have to throw out the pile and start over. Planning is where you decide which pieces belong. Here's where I think we can save ourselves a lot of unnecessary teacher workload. Don't start creating until you know what you're actually missing. If I start building activities before I've mapped out the unit, I could spend 2 hours creating something and then realize I didn't even need it, or that I already had something that accomplished the same goal. or that I built this elaborate activity for something students only needed 10 minutes to practice. I've done all of those things. So before you make the slides, before you design the worksheet, before you open TPT or Pinterest, make the decisions. What belongs here? What job does it need to do? Do I already have something that could do that job? And then, if the answer is no, you have an actual creation task. That's very different from sitting down and thinking, I need to create this unit. There's one more decision I want to give you permission to make. When is this ready enough? Not perfect, not finished forever, ready enough to teach, because you don't actually know everything about a unit until you've taught it. You don't actually know how long that activity will take with these students. You don't know which misconception is going to surface. You don't know what students will breeze through or where they'll need another day. So why are we trying to build a perfect finished product before we've gathered any of that information? Get the structure in place, make the important decisions, prepare what you genuinely need, then teach it. Take notes, adjust, and make the unit better next time. That's a much more sustainable approach to teacher planning, and honestly, a much better approach to teacher work-life balance than spending nights and weekends trying to predict every possible thing that could happen in a unit you haven't taught yet. Over the next several episodes, we're going to get specific about what all of this actually looks like. We'll talk about what planning looks like when it's not running you, and I'm going to paint a really specific picture of that so it's not just a concept. We're going to dig into the sorting framework that changes how you look at the materials you already have. We'll talk about why starting with the end of your unit, not the beginning, makes every other planning decision easier. And we'll get into what ready enough actually means in practice, because it's more specific than it sounds. This is the series I wish I had in year 2 of teaching multiple preps. And if you're listening to this thinking, yes, I have the unit, I have the giant Google Drive folder, I just need some help figuring out what to actually do with it. That's exactly what we're doing inside the unit planning lab, not planning your entire curriculum, one unit. You work through the planning process, make the decisions in order, and figure out how to take what you already have and turn it into something you can actually teach from. All of the unit planning lab content is available as soon as you join, so you can choose your unit and start working through it immediately. Link is in the show notes. Before the next episode, I want you to do one thing. Choose one unit, not your most overwhelming one, not the one that's completely blank. Just one unit you know you'll need to teach that isn't fully worked through yet. Then look at what you already have for it. Don't fix anything. Don't organize your Google Drive. Don't start creating. Just look. Because in the next episode, we're going to be talking about what planning looks like when it's not running you. And I want you to have a real unit in mind when you hear it. Finish something that makes tomorrow lighter. Until next time.